right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. It looks like we have the majority of folks signed in. Welcome to this hot and humid day. I know Bonnie was saying it was humid where she was, but I feel like we're in Louisiana too right now with this humidity. Um, we t Today we have Bonnie will be speaking, I think, right, legislative. You're going to give us some legislative updates, and we're also going to talk about give you an update on the pathways, what's been going on with that, what we're hearing from students, educators. So I think we should just kick it off. There's a lot of information to share. Oh, I'm sorry, polls. That's why you wanted me to introduce. Just a reminder that we do have polls, so make sure you're here, you respond to the polls. That way you get your CPE. And if you have questions, feel free either send them in the chat or use your little hand, raise your hand, and we'll get to you as we see them. I think that's it. Bonnie, you want to take it away?
Sure. I am thrilled to say that the legislative session ended not last week, but the week before. But more than 400 bills passed in the last few days of session, and many of them have amendments. Others are just part of a large consent calendar where things are just flying. So we've done our best to pull together all of the bills that we were working on, others that we were tracking to make sure no modifications were made, others where we were part of a coalition where there were a number of people working together to give you a good sense of what happened this session. There was a lot of things that happened, and a number of the bills are we call them aircraft carriers at the Capitol, but they're omnibus bills with a lot of things in them. And you have to go through literally line by line. And some of them are 600 pages long. And if you're lucky, others are only 100 pages long. But I want to let you know that we will provide you with greater detail on all of these measures so you have a complete understanding. Probably in a couple of weeks by the time we dive through everything. So we'll have a document available to you before too long. And we'll also have another session like we did last year, a CPE session that is a little bit longer, and we bring in experts to talk about the different provisions. So at that meeting, we probably will have Chris Davis from CBIA, who took the lead on the AI and data breach, all of the technology bills, because those impact you. We will have somebody else come in and speak to the tax bills in more detail. And I will cover some of the other measures that I'm going to touch on with you today that impact CPAs specifically in a certain way, such as the State Board of Accountancy and things like that. But for today, I'm going to touch on those key measures that either did or did not pass during the 2026 session. And I apologize, there's just so much that I am speaking to you via my iPhone while on my iPad. So we'll kick it off with the budget. That was a hot topic and something our organization got deeply involved in with the attempts to try to control the budget when we had those huge deficits. And I have to say, under Governor Malloy, certain measures were put in place and have done a good job of trying to get the ship righted. And we've made significant progress. We've actually had some really good monies in our rainy day fund. And when we have those, we transfer them over because of a volatility cap that we put in place. But this year, there was a lot of pressure to put funding towards other things and take them out from underneath our spending cap. So there were some changes that I would say Connecticut as a whole thought dollars were needed, but were very concerned in the end that changes were made where the volatility cap was concerned and spending cap, et cetera. So in the end, we have an absolutely huge budget. Governor Lamont proposed a budget of $28.7 billion in total spending and invests $190 million in education, which was a big issue, especially for towns where there's concerns regarding property taxes, another $100 million to municipalities. and then 80 million towards Medicaid deficiencies, which is a big issue for the hospitals and for those of us who pay for private insurance for ourselves or our employees. We end up picking up a lot of those. We subsidize the Medicaid program through our insurance premiums. So it was nice to see some of those dollars allocated to places where it could impact our taxes and or premiums, helping us out in some other areas. In terms of the volatility cap itself, the governor authorized the use of $813.7 million, which exceeds the volatility revenues targeted for investments, but he maintained the pension contribution. So at a recent meeting, he really emphasized over and over, we keep on putting money towards those pensions that were not funded properly for decades, and how we keep on paying those down, which is extremely important because the amount of debt that we had in those areas and just the uncompensated funds was quite scary. So it's nice to see that continue. So kudos to the legislature and the governor for doing that. They did have a sales tax rebate of a one-time $200 single filers, $400 for joint filers for the 2020 for tax year 2024. And that's available to individuals earning up to $200,000 or $400 retrospectively. Never been a big fan of this. I don't think our members have been from the feedback I received, but there were a lot of things discussed. There really was an agreement. And in the end, nobody wanted a special session. It's an election year, and this is where they went. There was a sales tax free week expansion in the budget as well. And the eligible items for that were expanded. I'm not going to say significantly, but nonetheless they were. We'll give you a list of those later. But the per item price cap raised from $100 to $300. So that's a big change and absolutely necessary given inflation and how much things have cost. You can't get kids a pair of shoes for less than $100 now. So I think everyone agreed that that was absolutely necessary. And then the school supplies tax exempt elimination. Taxes on school supplies were eliminated, returning approximately, they're saying $6 million to families. So those are a few of the things in the budget that they felt would help with our current, just everything going through the right roof in terms of costs. In terms of things that we care about because of the practices that you're in, tax measures were a hot topic this year. And let me see, I'm getting a low power mode. I'm plugged in. I don't want to go dead on you, but here we go. R&D tax credit was expanded. It was expanded to research and development tax credits for small businesses. Pass-through entities can now participate and earn a 6% credit on qualifying expenditures approved by DECD. The other measure that passed was fully expensing of R&D costs so that immediate full expensing of research and development experimentation costs are allowed beginning in the income year of 2026. There was also a caregiver tax credit, a small business health credit for individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements. And then there was a cannabis tax restructuring measure as well. So all of those things were deemed very important and passed during this year. I'm just going to grab a battery. Sorry about that. The big topic really up at the Capitol wasn't taxes this year, even though there was a lot of talk about the budget and different tax proposals. It was really artificial intelligence from the start. I'm going to plug my computer and give me 2 seconds to a different device. I apologize. I am at the AICPA council meeting, so I am remote. And yeah, there we go. And half the plugs in the hotel room don't seem to work. There we go. Sorry about that. So on the artificial intelligence front, this has been a bill, or there has been a bill on this topic for several years, and it keeps on getting modified. Initially, when we were looking at things, there was concern that we'd be the first in the country, and that really wasn't a good thing in this area because we didn't want to stifle any type of positive development, whether it be economic or technology, though everyone agreed they had concerns on deep fakes and other things. So they went back to the table, talked some more, and then came back again this year. There are several states that have what they've been calling model legislation, not because everyone believes it's the right thing to do, but there have been the ones that other states have been copying if they didn't have like a deep technology group of their own. In Connecticut, we have a senator that actually leads the AI task force for the National Council of State Legislature, and that's James Maroney out of Milford. And he, along with a number of other people, including the CEO of IBM and individuals from some of the larger accounting firms, got together. We had a bunch of entrepreneurs from the Yale region and met on this issue last year and again this year to try to shape a different bill that would be more acceptable to the governor and not restrict us in ways that would later be harmful while still addressing our concerns. So they touched on, they actually call it the Artificial Intelligence Responsibility and Transparency Act. So that kind of tells you in many ways what they cover. But they're regulating automatic employment related decision-making tools. So that's something for people to be aware of when you're using Indeed or any of those things. They will give you a list of people that you should look at. Under this bill, you are going to have obligations to look at more than the ones AI just tells you to look at out of concern for discrimination. So we want to prevent that, the governor said, the legislator said. So there's some specific things regarding AI when it comes to hiring, promotion, terminating, and any decisions regarding any obligations for the employees or that the employer has as well. Again, we'll give you more detail on that, but that was a hot topic and that's in there and that impacts every employer. It also requires large generative AI providers to actually embed, and I don't know what this means, provenance data in AI generated audio, images, and video content. But I did ask the person who's agreed to speak to our group to give us some more explanation on that. And I will include that in the write-up so everyone has a little bit more in-depth knowledge of what they're requiring there. They also established a pilot program for independent third-party AI verification organizations. It creates a Connecticut AI Academy for workforce development, which I think is that one's actually good, that they'll be actually building curriculum that people will be able to use. It mandates AI-related layoff disclosures and state agency AI impact assessments. That was something that the unions pushed for very hard. It adds AI to K through 12 computer science curricula. It plans a regulatory sandbox, is what they call it up at the Capitol, for AI product testing. And it enforces exclusivity by the AG under CUTPA. This is a good thing. CUTPA is not a good thing because that's treble damages. But initially, one of our biggest concerns was that they were going to have a private right of action in this measure. And that's always a problem. You know, people bring lawsuits because you have a disgruntled employee, somebody who's angry about some decision you've made, and then you lose even if you win a case because you have to pay to defend yourselves. So not having that in there was extremely important to us, who were very happy that the pride of action was removed. There's a lot in this measure and more will be coming out in greater detail. But if somebody wants something sooner than we're ready to write up our own description, I can send you the Office of Legislative Research's detailed analysis on the measure. Just shoot us an email and I will get that to you. In terms of data privacy, that's another big issue for us. Consumer data privacy and data broker regulation is what this bill was all about, Senate Bill 4. And it establishes a registry for data brokers and it creates a one-click deletion mechanism so consumers can remove their personal data from all broker databases. Connecticut's the second state to do this. California's already done it, but because of that, we're going to run into some kinks as this is happening. So just be aware of it. It does ban the sale of precise geolocation data, concerns regarding stalking. So they said, not going to permit that. It regulates the use of facial recognition in technology. That was a big one. I understand that it happens quite a bit in retail establishments and many other places. So that one was a hot topic during the session and included in this measure. It addresses surveillance and personalized pricing. And it also carves out from this measure certain institutions. So as they've moved along on different things like this, we've made sure that we've been carved out in the past by being part of an organization that's covered by GLB, the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. Unfortunately, they made modifications this year, and they said that not only were they going to make some modifications in terms of the size of companies impacted. So they went from companies processing data from 100,000 people down to 35,000 people. But they also changed, we used to have this blanket GLB carve out. They've changed it now so that it's a data level exemption. So information that is actually GLB data, personal financial information regulated under that, is still exempt. So you have no worries about that. However, the CPA community really has been handled a two-part structure that we have to deal with, because while the personal financial information is all taken care of, there is a narrow new entity level exemption, and we are not part of that because that covers banks, insurance agents, brokers, dealers, the insurance community as a whole, and investment advisors. But it does not go beyond that to all the other financial professionals, including accounting, the way it used to when it comes to things such as your personnel records, your employee records. If you're at a bank, you're set. You don't have to worry about what you're doing with that non-financial data. But if you're not at a bank or an insurance company for the most part, then everyone needs to be aware of this measure, because you are impacted from and everything other than financial data perspective. So just something to be aware of. On the labor front, there was an omnibus labor bill. Most of it's not of concern to our members. It covers wage and pay transparency, employment agreements, worker safety, compensation, construction and public works, teacher termination. There are some things in here such as lactation accommodations that matter to us. There's provisions regarding cannabis workers, first responders, you name it. The bulk of it is not of concern to you. So we will write it up for you, and you can take a look at that to see if there's anything in there from an employer perspective that you'd like to pay attention to. The big topic up at the Capitol again this year was warehouse workforce bill, protecting the warehouse workers, et cetera. So that passed this year on party line vote. And then the other big bill from the small business community's perspective was the DECD concierge. There's a new position created to help businesses navigate state programs and connect with DECD resources. So that's something that our members, many of them, will be able to take advantage of as well, not only for themselves, but to get information to help clients if so desired. I'm just going to touch on a few bills that did not pass. Because they're bills that we talked to you about. One of them that we wrote about during the session was Senate Bill 2, which would have created a tax exemption on energy for businesses. Energy costs are through the roof. We know that as individuals as well as business owners. And this was something that was pushed hard because they add so many things to the energy bill. There was a request to exempt it from the sales tax. But in the end, this did not advance despite strong support by the business community. Another measure that a lot of people were talking about were association health plans. That was a big issue. It has been for a long time because it's believed that there may be some opportunities to reduce healthcare costs in terms of insurance, but that one did not make it out of the Appropriations Committee. A big one for us that I asked for help with, and I'm going to thank everyone who reached out because it was extremely important, was House Bill 5222. And that would have really minimized, to say the least, the State Board of Accountancy's role in licensure and enforcement of CPAs. That's a major concern to us because the people at DCP are not CPAs, and even if you found one within their groups, they don't know about peer review or many other things in terms of what's happening with it. It's constantly changing, and therefore, they've made some decisions in recent years that have been really inaccurate, such as if you've got a firm that wants to start doing attestation work and they're advertising for it. DCP actually tried to find someone for doing that because they weren't enrolled in peer review. Well, you can't be enrolled in peer review unless you have done attestation work to have reviewed. So it didn't make any sense, but they didn't understand it. So I have to say, I'm going to give a major shout out to Tim Egan, the chair of the State Board of Accountancy, for working with me on this bill. We scheduled a meeting with the deputy commissioner, Jeff Marvin at DCP, and went and talked to him about the problems. We explained it to him, and he was great and said, I'm not sure we won't come back and talk about a possible way to address your concerns and still address some of ours. But for this year, we will remove sections 1 and 2 from that bill. And that's exactly what they did. And those are the sections that touched us. I don't believe that could have happened if we had not had so many people submit letters in opposition to sections 1 and 2. When you respond to my request to send in a letter and you allow us to turn it into testimony, which is just taking your letter and submitting it as testimony, not only does your individual legislator see that or legislator see that, but what happens at the Capitol is all of the testimony is all the people that submitted testimony are listed. And so when they see CPA, CPA, CPA after CPA that have submitted something in opposition to a measure that they've put forward, they pay attention. And the more people that are on there, the more power we have to stop it, which means it's the more likely we are to be able to stop it. It's one of the things that the CPA community has done very effectively for several years since everything went digital. We don't have the same ability to have the personal touches, at least not to the same extent we used to. So taking advantage of this digital billboard, so to speak, to say, hey, we're watching, this is a problem, is extremely important. If I only have 5 or 10 people on there, it's not going to get me what I need. I need to have that volume. And I thank you very much for coming through with us on this bill this year because it came out of the blue. It would have been a major problem. And because of your support and the support of the State Board of Accountancy, and then the DCP leaders, but we were able to stop it. But it became possible because of your grassroots response. So thank you. Income tax rate increase was discussed as well, in particular, one that a number of our members had asked questions about, and that was a capital gain surcharge. That did not go forward. A statewide property tax on high value homes, that's something that's pushed constantly by a few people, and that measure did not go forward either. Along those lines, I will let you know there is going to be a significant change at the legislature next year, and that is that the longtime Senate president, and before that, Senate Majority Leader Martin Looney from New Haven, has chosen not to seek re-election. That means there'll be a change in leadership in the Senate. And a lot of these property tax issues, I don't know whether or not they'll still be proposed by some people, but whether they have as much attention will remain to be seen. He's a big proponent of trying to address property tax issues because of the high property taxes in New Haven. Non-compete bill was a big concern for us because of the independence rules, not the non-compete aspect so much as the non-exclusivity. We could not have required somebody not to work in a certain location. And as you know, that would have been a problem for us. I am going to give Representative Sanchez a real shout out here. We went in and explained our concerns there. And he actually agreed to an amendment that we had drafted that would have said that we would have been able to have these non-exclusivity agreements if if it called for it within our state regulation or any any governmental regulation or statutes, because we are covered by the SEC with these independence rules as well, in addition to our professional standards of conduct. And it's clearly stated within the AICPA, these rules that independence is important. So we can't have someone working for, my firm who audits, Acme Wire. And Acme Wire, actually, that's probably, I just remember that from the Roadrunner. And Acme Wire, they're working for them at the same time. It just doesn't work. So we didn't want to have concerns over that with all the attention we're already getting surrounding independence with alternative practice structures, et cetera. So that measure we were able to first get addressed so that if it did pass, it would not have been problematic. But in the end, it did not pass. I expect that to come back next year, but because we got that agreement with Representative Sanchez this year, I would think that we would be able to do the same again next year. That's a real high level overview of many of the issues that were the ones talked about most in the press, probably the ones that we had a lot of input on. There were some other measures that we had some concerns with initially, but again, we're able to be tweaked regarding when somebody has to have a background check and then have another background check every 3 years kind of things. We were able to work with all the agencies to ensure that our concerns were addressed on everything that passed, with the exception of the data breach not having that full exemption carve out for us. That one was just a no-go as far as the legislative leaders were concerned, but we'll try to address that one again next year as well. So I apologize for rambling. That's what session does to me. And another week I should be back to regular, Bonnie. But if anybody has any questions that I might be able to answer for you on any of these bills, and I'm not guaranteeing I can, some of them are pretty technical, but at a minimum, if I can't, I will get back to you with an answer from somebody that has greater knowledge on the topic than I do. April, I cannot see because I'm using my phone. Are there any questions in the chat?
I do not see anything. I don't see hands up either.
Perfect. Then the timing wise, we're right on track. So that takes the first half hour of our program today. The next topic
Oh,
we've got, go.
sorry. Mark, you have
Yeah,
a
I couldn't
question?
find the yeah, I couldn't find the button fast enough. Um, I know there was a proposal maybe about a year ago for a payroll related tax for workers to circumvent the $10,000 salt cap. And I know we had responded. There was a lot of problems with that. Is that still being discussed or is that just now off the table?
That version of the payroll tax is off the table, but earlier in session, I did reach out to our tax committees in particular regarding a different payroll tax measure where people could have opted in for a payroll tax. It was very, very complicated and something that would have been a nightmare for CPAs and employers. So it did get a lot of attention initially, but it did not come out of the finance committee. So it died earlier this year than the one did a couple of years ago. You're right regarding the salt workaround. So we don't have anything on payroll taxes this year.
I believe Sarah, you had a question. Sarah, Sarah K? No?
We'll give people an opportunity for questions and answers at the end again. So if you think of something as we're talking about pathways and stuff, just jot it down or stick it in chat and we'll address it when we get to the end, because we plan for a time for Q&A at the end of our entire session as well. So April and I have been working a lot on pathways. And again, thank you very much for your support last year when we were able to become the first state in the Northeast to get through the third pathway and really improve mobility. Since, or along with us, there were some people that did it before us, but since last year or the last time we've talked, we've had a number of new states actually adopt the pathway legislation. So we know at least 2 more did it last week. And I actually heard that yesterday, New Hampshire's measure has gone, no, not New Hampshire, Vermont's measure has been sent to their governor. And in Rhode Island, the hearing took place a few weeks ago. And there's been one of our colleagues that we work with very closely has been working it with the Speaker of their House. Theirs runs a little bit differently than ours does. And they have a commitment to pass it there this year, and they're hoping to end their session by June 15th. So very easily in a few weeks, we could have both let's see, if you're talking about the Northeast, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire will have passed the bill. Massachusetts has had a bill introduced for a couple of years. They have a different cycle. It's a 2-year cycle. And I know they were hoping to get it past one chamber, which did happen. I believe it was the Senate in the spring. But we've heard nothing else about movement on that measure yet. But the Massachusetts Society continues to work to try to get that measure passed. So anyways, if you look at the country as a whole, it is moving lightning fast, which is absolutely great. We know we have at least 32 jurisdictions, not counting New Hampshire or Rhode Island. This is only people that have passed it and their governor has signed it. 32 jurisdictions, 30 states plus Washington, DC, and Puerto Rico, I believe, have already adopted their legislation. And Connecticut's went into effect on October 1st. So April works with our students and our educators all the time. And I'm curious, what are you hearing about it? Are educators encouraged or students encouraged that this is something that's been welcome and it's finally passed in Connecticut?
So there's not a whole lot of long term, but because I do have that direct access, what we're hearing initially has been the access and the affordability have been huge. Under the old structure, students had to obtain a master's degree, really, but now it's allowing them to go with the bachelor's and that 2 years experience. So a lot of students are excited. They'll be able to enter the workforce potentially earlier. Internships, too, we're hearing from our employers that internships are now going to become more important. The students will be getting more experiential learning too. For our educators, there are some concerns. They're going to need to rethink that 5th-year program, potentially, positioning that. And we're seeing, going back to employers, that they're recruiting even earlier now. So we're seeing employers in the colleges recruiting at the sophomore year, some even freshmen. So before we were hearing it was 2-year recruitment, they were recruiting 2 years earlier, but now they're going 3 years. So students are sitting on knowing that they have an internship years before they even started potentially. So we're seeing it's creating a great workforce pipeline. We're finally kind of able to replenish that pipeline a little easier.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting, so as many of you know, I've lobbied for years and worked on a lot of legislation, but I've never worked on a piece of legislation where I saw such positive results so quickly. So as we said, this measure went into effect on October 1st. And what we were saying, by November, December, we started to see LinkedIn posts about some people who chose to continue to, apply for graduate school, and they were going to go on and get their post-baccalaureate degree. And we're like, well, good for you. We had some that were posting that, yay, they just graduated and they had a position somewhere, and
Yeah.
even commented that they chose that path because they learned better by doing. It was just really interesting. And there was
Yeah.
another one that we saw very early on where somebody who said that they had graduated with their accounting degree and they weren't seeking a post-baccalaureate degree, but they were seeking the additional 30 credit hours through certificates in technology or analytics. And I thought, well, that's really smart, because everyone wants somebody who's got some knowledge of technology now entering it. So to see somebody choose each of those three pathways and announce it via LinkedIn early on with great pride about seeking their CPA. They're always like future CPA. They always stick that out there, future CPA or CPA candidate, was pretty exciting. I thought it created a nice buzz around the profession after we'd had some negative press for a while. Did you feel the same way?
I'm sorry, for me, Bonnie?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, for sure. Um, but going back to talking about the students going and getting those additional credits in the more tech, that I've definitely heard, and even from the educators' side, they're looking at changing curriculums for the accounting programs to include more of that, the data analytics, and those types of classes, too. So, um,
I think what
but
you said is
yes,
very true. They're all going to have to look, and I think they already are.
yeah,
How do they redesign their programs? Or if some people were already forward thinking, knowing that it was coming, what massages, how do they have to tinker with what they put out there to tighten it up even further? And I think that's going to continue as we continue to see tech become just a bigger part of the profession. People are going to have to increase their technology skills. And it's best if they learn that while they're in those classes. Audit programs are now AI driven. We've got tax programs that are AI driven. We don't think about it a lot because you just get on and you use your program. But there are certain things that, certain skills that would definitely benefit us to have more people have those skills or have a better grasp of those skills.
right, right.
What else is being talked about right now in terms of students making decisions? Is one of our problems lack of awareness still?
Yes, yes. Lack of, maybe not lack of awareness, but not necessarily fully understanding what it means, what the pathways means for them, and not just the students, but our educators too. So we have to get out to the colleges more, speak to our educators. We have our educators group, which has been really great to get this information out there so that they can then relay to their students and help them have a better understanding of it. The We are hearing from our educators that, like our community colleges, where there was their students were having the difficulty of making that transfer to then the 4 year. There was a disconnect really. This has made it easier for those types of students. So I know our community college and 4 year colleges are working much better together now um, to I don't know, bridge the gap, I guess, for those students, because community college students are really a great a resource for us to move through that pipeline too, that we don't want to forget about them.
Right.
Um, yeah, so getting to those colleges I've found has been a really good, to be able to talk to those educators,
I
to
think
get.
something. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think something that's important for our members to know, as you're asked questions by people, one of the concerns is, well, if I go the 4-year route, which is allowed here in Connecticut right now, does that mean that I don't have the ability to handle clients in other states? Will I be at a disadvantage at my firm because I will be limited in what work I can do? One of the things that kept the 150 from being removed sooner, because there's been talk about it for 10 years, is the fact that we needed to preserve mobility as we made the changes. So when everyone felt like the time was finally right and all the state societies came together and decided we were going to push forward, what happened was the group felt that if we could get it done in 5 years, that would be great, because it took 10 years to get mobility. But I will tell you that we expect to have it in every state, meaning the 3 pathways in every state by the end of 2027. So by the end of 2026, it is expected to have been adopted in all but 2 states. The only reason it's not expected in those 2 states is North Dakota is not in session this year, but they do plan to have it introduced and passed next year, and feel very strongly that will happen. And Wyoming has a budgetary issues only session, so nothing such as a pathways bill could be introduced because it's not a budget bill. So next year, when they have a full session where anything can be introduced, they expect that this measure will pass. They know they will be introducing it. They've already been told by leadership they've got support for it. And so they're expecting that it will pass in Wyoming next year. That means that in 3 years, we will have gotten mobility nationwide, pathways nationwide. So that's a plus. Mobility is in all of those bills except for one. Hawaii has always been an outlier with mobility. They've never adopted it, and they have no plans of changing that right now. So they did move forward with pathways, but mobility, they're not touching. Every other state jurisdiction is doing both pathways and mobility. So if you're asked, we're good. It's one of the things that educators have been worried about. What do we do? For example, UConn gets a lot of students from Massachusetts. It's not adopted in Massachusetts yet. We're not worried about it because we're being told by the Massachusetts Society that they're moving that right along there. And if for some reason there was a snag this year, there is no way Massachusetts would be an outlier when next year they came in and there were only 2 states plus Massachusetts not to have it, and the other 2 states were moving. So that pressure on politicians not to be left behind always works wonders. So that's good news. That should encourage, and from what I understand, has encouraged other institutions in our state to feel more comfortable about designing their program around those 3 pathways. So I think that's very good news. Does anybody have any questions on the pathways, on the guidance that's been given so far on how that pathway measure works? As regulations are adopted, and it takes a long time in Connecticut, roughly 3 years, the Board of Accountancy will continue to issue guidance. So they've already sent out a letter of guidance to the Department of Consumer Protection to explain how they believe this should be actually interpreted and how it should work. That's really helpful, because waiting 3 years for any guidance just doesn't serve anybody well. So it's nice that our board has been on top of it and moved quickly on that. And they've also indicated that as things change around the country and everyone's implementing their new measures, should something arise that they can address through guidance or regulations, we'll work on that. Or if we need to seek additional legislative changes, we can do that. But they are all over this and are very supportive of the measure. So greatly appreciate how much time and energy they've committed to making this work. It's been nice. I heard from many of you for a long time. Let's change, let's change. And you kept on hearing from me, mobility, mobility. But we finally had the opportunity to move. And I think it is benefiting everyone. You're giving options. You know, there's that book, Different Brains, Different Learners. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And it's nice in terms of the giving opportunities to a diverse population that might not have had them under the old system. People don't learn the same way. They don't have the same economic means, et cetera. So
Right.
we're very happy with how forward Connecticut has been in adopting the legislation, getting it implemented rather quickly, and moving forward with it. So Pennsylvania's passed theirs and had it effective immediately. So they went into effect, I believe it was like last July. New York followed us, but they decided that although they passed it, they were going to wait 1 year to implement it so they could develop all their regulations, et cetera. So theirs goes into effect, I believe it's January 1, 2027. But again, it's already passed there. We've got ours passed and in effect as of October 1, 2025. And we're seeing many others throughout the country move very quickly. So just wanted to make sure that I know how many of you wrote letters for us on this one, and it was a huge turnout. So we thank you very much. Our pipeline task force deserves a big shout out for our help there. And Brian Riley submitted testimony for us on it. He's the chair of the pipeline task force. It was really nice to see the all-around support the Board of Accountancy did. So I will also say that it's very nice to have everyone working together so well. The collaboration that's taken place over the last 5 years has really been very beneficial for all of us. So does anybody have any questions on anything that either April or I spoke about today?
I can say, actually, Bonnie, the something a number of students have asked, and while we have our firms here, and maybe they can give us some feedback. Students are asking, are firms going to look at someone who took an alternative pathway, that third pathway versus the 150 hours? Will a firm be more apt to go with that 150-hour student or applicant than someone who took the 2 years experience instead with the 120, right? Yeah. Any, does anyone look at that differently? Would look at an applicant differently? I mean, they both have their CPA, they passed the exam, so I guess it doesn't matter. I'll have to tell the students that it really isn't, as long as
I
they've
guess
got
the
their,
question would be for those people that they don't have their 2 years experience yet when they graduate, but they'll be looking for a job to get that, finish getting the
true,
experience. So they won't have their CPA certificate yet and are not likely
right,
to have taken all 4 sections of the exam.
exam.
Now, most people hire people out of graduate school now or that have just gotten their 30 credits. Many of them don't have a master's, they just have 30 credits. And they don't have their exam either. But it is interesting to ask, if you're looking at candidates, are you going to favor those with additional education? It'll be interesting because in our state, that additional education is not required to relate to accounting or the profession at all. So I had many parents complain to me about their children taking basket weaving and why were they paying for this to become a CPA? So does anybody have any thoughts on that? I think April raises a very good question. If you have 2 candidates before you, is it really going to depend on the candidate themselves and their personality, what you feel you got from them in terms of their work ethic, their abilities more, or is the thing that's going to play greater is how much education. Clearly, it will come into your considerations, but if all else is equal, I assume you go with someone with more education. If it's not equal and you have someone who you feel is a slightly better candidate but does not have the extra education, who do you go with?
So we have a comment, experience is more valuable than formal educational credits. So I think it kind of it all depends, right, on the applicant. Mark has his hand up.
I think it depends on the position that you're filling. If you're just looking for a warm body to put in a chair that's an entry level person, you're going to go with either one, whether they got the extra education or they got the experience. My opinion is when I hire, I'm looking for somebody who's had actual experience, because it's different. They can take all the courses they want in college, and they still don't know half the stuff that we need them to do in the real world, in the accounting world. When I graduated from college way back, um, the managing partner of the first firm I worked at says, there's a lot of things you don't know, and you're gonna learn them over the course of your years spent here working, and it was certainly true. I mean, there was stuff that I encountered that was never mentioned in college, partly because, oh, I didn't take that course. There were, you met the minimum requirements, 30 credit hours in accounting and 90 hours in other subjects. And, there's so many accounting and business courses to choose from. And, maybe the ones that you chose didn't cover the particular topic that you would have been exposed to in an actual career. So, uh, when I'm hiring, I'm looking more at experience than the education. But I assess the education in a different manner, and for me, I think I find the biggest lack of experience is people still don't know how to write um, professionally. And and it shows, especially, I know emails are a more informal means of communicating, but still, when you're getting an email from a professional firm, you would expect it to show more professional than when it's going to a client or it's going to the IRS. So I think experience sometimes trumps that extra year of education.
It sounds like we have a number of people that agree. Another chat, a lot of things learned in the classroom don't necessarily translate to the office. So, and to your comment, Mark, on more of the soft skills, I guess, writing, I think networking and just speaking to people. A lot of our students now are the COVID, I call them the COVID kids, right? So they were learning online, they were interacting online. So that we really lost a lot of that face-to-face interaction. So, and we're working with the educators to kind of go back to basics, right? And those soft skills,
That
working
that's a
with,
very that's a very good point. My kids, were those COVID kids. They were in high school when COVID happened, and my oldest daughter's graduation was a drive-by graduation. There was no,
yeah,
and she felt cheated out of a graduation experience.
yeah,
But fortunately, uh, not just for her, but that had an indirect benefit, the COVID experience, because fortunately she attended a private school, private high school, that had a requirement that you had a laptop for learning. And, even when they had a snow day, they were learning at home on the
yeah,
laptop. Um, Most of the public schools probably didn't have that immediately. But I think those kids, one of the benefit, I mean, if you look at the silver lining in that COVID experience, those kids know how to work remotely. Whereas
Yes.
the older generation doesn't work as well remotely. Those kids can do it. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, my daughters, both of them have that experience. That everything's online. Well, I don't need to go to a particular place to do my homework or anything. I can do it from anywhere.
Yeah.
I think that's a silver lining for them.
Yeah. April, do we have any other questions or comments?
Nope.
Well, I'm going to thank everyone for your time. And again, I'll get something written up for everyone. We will announce it in the member newsletter. We'll get it up on the website, and keep an eye out for if you want great detail and people with expertise in the different areas to be able to answer questions. Please sign up for Lisa's CPE class on the session. I think it'll be very interesting. I'm very much interested in what they have to say about the data breach and AI measures. There's just a lot of new stuff in there, and it changes the way CPA firms are treated. And many others, many of your clients will be covered now that were never covered before as well. So just something to be aware of. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a great day, and thank you for your time.
Bonnie?
Bye-bye.
Bonnie, I think earlier you said there was going to be something later in the session. Maybe I missed it. But regarding the AI in recruiting employees. So did they actually pass some guidelines regarding AI? So in other words, if you use one of those job search sites, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, et cetera, and let's say that's all you're using, is there a problem using that? I mean,
There are
we're just looking at the candidates that they pass along to us. It's not like we're saying, don't show me people from this whatever demographic.
right. Bear with me, I'm flipping back to that section. So they're not saying that you can't use one of those programs, but what they are saying is that so anything that's considered, they call it AEDT, an automated employment related decision-making tool, that if employers are using AI in hiring, promotion, or termination decisions, that you face new obligations. And it does go into great detail about what those requirements are. And it's to ensure that, not that you specifically haven't chosen to discriminate, but your decision, if it's based on AI solely, is not discriminating, because we all know that AI does discriminate. So,
Okay, so I think what you're saying is if you merely using ZipRecruiter or Indeed is not the problem. It's if you have another, I don't know, application between you and
no, I'm
ZipRecruiter.
saying if you are using those, you're going to have to do certain things that you just said you got a list of, and again, I made the point about the program coming up because you're going to need to speak to someone who's got more expertise in this than I do. But the example that was used during the legislative session by the governor was that if you're using something like Indeed, where it gives you, say you had 100 applicants apply for a position that you're seeking to fill, it gives you 10 applicants that says these are the right people for you. You can look at those 10 people, but it's also saying that you can't just look at those 10 people. You need to look at more, because AI may not have grabbed someone else that was right for that position, but because it felt that, for a while they were showing pictures of different things. So let's say all chemists wear in pictures were wearing glasses. It doesn't mean that all chemists wear glasses. But then if you asked AI to select the right person to be a chemist, it would have given you someone that wore glasses. That's what the picture of it was in its head. So anyways, what they're saying is that you need to make sure when you're using those programs that you've taken steps, you've got new obligations that you need to take certain steps to ensure that you are not relying solely on AI and therefore have a high potential of discrimination in your decision.
Well,
That'll
that
be
means they're
covered.
assuming I have a high degree of control over what AI is giving to me because,
Well,
I
AI
use
lets you
those apps.
access. It lets you access every resume. People choose not
Sure.
to do that
Okay.
now because who wants to go through 100
So,
resumes? But
so
those
I'll give you,
details will be shared in greater length later. I gave you
okay.
what I have from the summary that I wrote up going through it. Like I said, that bill is massive and it's got a lot of terms that are beyond
Okay.
me. I am not an AI expert. So we
Okay.
will have someone that speaks to that at the program. Just because I don't have that expertise, I want to make sure you're getting all the right answers. But I just gave you an example
Yep.
where you would end up having to look at more resumes than just the ones AI identified for you. That was
Okay.
one of the things discussed during session.
Okay. I got one other comment. So I looked at one particular bill I think you highlighted. I looked at the bill and I don't know if it's something we can do, but it just seems to me when they have a bill, it's 150 pages long and it usually covers more than one thing. We're looking for something in particular, anything tax related, for example. It's buried somewhere in that bill and we have to go through all 150 pages. It seems to me when they create the text of the bill, there should be maybe a table of contents at the beginning. Section 1 is this. It's on page 4. Section 2 is this. It's on page 7. Because otherwise, I mean, just the other day I went looking for something because something caught my eye in the title, and I says, wait a minute, I wonder if this has something that's a tax related thing. And I went and I was going page by page, and I says, where are they talking about it?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, that's not the way our legislation is drafted, and they're very strict. They don't make modifications. But when they do the summaries of the legislation, they identify the sections. And when I send out my summary, I'll give you the public act or bill number. If both are available, I give you both. And I also give you the section number to look at. So during the session, when we send something out and we say there's a problem, like we did with 5222, I think there were 52 sections to that bill initially or something like that. We said sections 1 and 2, because you're right. It is, you do have to read through everything to find out which sections you care about, or there's something else in another section. They don't provide headings. And I'll be honest too, the titles of the bills often don't really say what the bill does either,
Right.
which is why they correct them when they turn them into public acts. I wish
Thank
I
you,
could
Glenn.
make that happen, Mark. Believe me, it would make my life much easier. But that's one, I asked about it when I first started working at the Capitol, and it was a no, that can't be done.
Well, that's how they bury stuff that they don't want you to know about. They give a bill a title like improving our water quality, and then 30 sections into the bill, it goes on for uh, one paragraph. We are now increasing the taxes 10% across all taxpayers. And it gets lost in all the verbiage.
That's why you have lobbyists through us. Yes, if you don't have a lobbyist, you could be absolutely hammered. You're correct.
Okay.
All right, it's 9:05. I apologize to those of you for going over, but thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.